Thank you, Mr. Giordano. That's half the time you were allotted. It's greatly appreciated. Mr. LaBella, take a hint.
No pressure, no pressure.
I'm sorry, sir. Go ahead.
Thank you for that welcome, sir. My name is Vito LaBella. I'm the current PTO president at the Christa McAuliffe Middle School, a newly elected CEC 20 member, as well as a founding member of Place New York City with my friend here, Chris Giordano. I was at an event last year with Eric Adams. We served together in the Transit Police Department in the 80s, and the subject of mayoral control came up. Eric asked me what I thought, and I said, well, I loved it under Bloomberg and Klein, but I hated it under Carranza and de Blasio. And Eric smiled and he said, well, that's politics, you know. Sometimes you cheer and sometimes you jeer. And even though I'm still a fan of mayoral control, I think that it's long past time to institute some checks and balances into the system. I want to relate to you an incident that occurred as I was acting in my new capacity in the CEC. Committee members and I were trying to address the needs of our special needs students, some of whom travel long distances on buses every day to get to the appropriate services. At a meeting with a DOE official, my committee and I had some basic questions. How many of these kids are there? What kinds of services do they need? What is the breakdown? And most importantly, how many of these kids are leaving our district to get services elsewhere? Well, the person who was supposed to be there from the DOE and have these answers had nothing. Okay? So as a retired lieutenant back in the day, if I was at a community meeting or, God forbid, a ComStat meeting, and I had given answers like that, I would face severe consequences. You know, my locker would end up halfway across the city. If it was private industry, at a board meeting, I would be subject to being fired. So, you know, this is part of the problem. There is more than enough anecdotal information about the DOE's lack of transparency, lack of accountability, and unresponsiveness to warrant state action. Not a takeover, of course, which is incredibly difficult, but proper oversight. Whether it concerns the exact metrics to get into a screened high school or who gets into a seat in a kindergarten when there are more kids than seats available, the DOE refuses to embrace any kind of transparency. They lock up information in a black box and ask parents to trust them to do the right thing. Well, whether it's incidents of grade fraud at Maspeth High School, kids not getting evaluated for IEPs in a timely fashion, or the fact that the SCI forwards far too many complaints to the DOE that are about the DOE, it's clear that that trust is misplaced. The Chancellor has asked the state to get out of the way and let him take responsibility for populating the specialized high schools. Please don't do that. Stay in the way, please. In 2013, there was an audit on the admission process to these schools. It found that 319 of the 4,075 students in screened high schools, 8%, did not appear to meet the enrollment criteria. There are no safeguards in place right now today to ensure that that same nepotism, cronyism, or corruption isn't even more rampant. And if the only thing the city cared about, irrespective of political considerations, was educating underserved black and brown children and preparing them for exams like the SHSAT and the state math and English exams, if the DOE really wanted to take the moral high ground, irrespective of political considerations, then the city and the DOE would, in compliance with New York state law, approve appropriate facilities for successful charter schools that are trying to expand to serve their kids. The results that many of these schools achieve should be celebrated and emulated. The fact that the Chancellor and Mayor are at war with these schools is an egregious affront to their stated desire to ensure educational equity and excellence for every child in this city. The legislature needs to explore, given CECs, the authority similar to what the Police Civilian Complaint Board has in the police department. When CEC members ask for information, state law should mandate that it is provided in a timely fashion. CEC should be able to audit which kids were accepted to screen programs to ensure fairness, and they should feel complaints against teachers, administrators, and refer them to the appropriate investigative body. When the SCI or DOE investigates, the results and the reasons for those results should be provided. Thank you very much. Happy holidays. I have 15 seconds left. Please, please, Assembly members, relay to Ms. Dickens that there is no my community and your community. There's just our community. And I think about other communities all the time. And if I could do what we do in District 20 and clone it and plop it into every single district in this city, I would give my right kidney to be able to do that. Thank you.
Your points are well taken, Mr. LaBella, but I can assure you, Ms. Dickens, having listened to her over the years, she understands exactly what you're saying. Questions? Members of the panel. Mr. Epstein.
Thank you for both of you for your testimony. And I do appreciate maybe feeling the opposite about Mayor Bloomberg during his years as a parent leader, as a parent activist during those years of the beginning of mayoral control, and how detrimental it was to my district where my kids went, and how corrosive and problematic it was in a school that really believed in equity and inclusion and diversity as a richness to our city. But you mentioned a lot around fairness and making sure that's what's fair. I'm interested to hear how fairness is defined, because everyone may just see fairness in a really different way. And you talk about having access to make sure things are fair. I remember when Bloomberg took over the Gifted and Talented program in East Harlem. Before he took over, the schools could decide what children should go in, and in East Harlem, 50 kids got into those programs. The year after, when Bloomberg made it fair, 0 children got into that program. So fairness is really an important concept, and I'm wondering where you feel like diversity, equity, and inclusion play in that fairness equation.
For anyone?
Either.
Well, first off, I've been on the record to say that was a mistake by the administration, okay? Place New York City wants to expand G&T throughout the city. The problem was, back in the day when he did that, the 90 percentile ranking for district schools and the 97% ranking for citywide schools was based upon a national sample. It should have been the top 3% in the school or the district gets a one program, and the top 10% in every single school gets into the a school model for G&T. So that was a mistake. I believe that's a big reason why we don't have the pipeline for the specialized high schools that we should in all communities.
So just so I'm clear about that. So you're saying that if there was a model where kids in the school were higher performing kids in that school, they could be placed into a new program, into like a G&T or other schools, to allow them to continue to succeed.
Yes, absolutely. And starting in kindergarten, there should be a class for every single child starting in kindergarten that would do well in an accelerated type of curriculum. But the fairness issue is a little bit different, because there's always this scarcity model, because it's New York City, right? So when I think about what's fair, I think about transparency and fairness. And sometimes if everybody knows what the metrics are, even if the metrics are a lottery, and all of the things are laid out, and there's oversight, and the parents are assured that there's nobody gaming the system, right? So I'm not going to make a phone call. Someone else is not going to make a phone call. That whatever it is. Whatever the outcome is more acceptable to the individual. So that's when it comes to oversight and transparency and accountability. Chris?
My remarks weren't really addressing fairness, but I will say that I think it's clear that there's resource inequities throughout the city, and that has to be addressed. There are systems that cluster children, but they, rather than, I would say, addressing education levels, they're clustering according to socioeconomic levels, and I think that increases the disparities, it increases the gaps, and that needs to be addressed. I think John Liu at an event last week said it really well. We can have both acceleration and equity. They don't have to be at odds with each other. And I think, I believe that we need to provide accelerated and remediated education for the kids depending on their need and potential to realize their potential. And we also need to work towards more equitable, inclusive, and diverse systems.
Gentlemen, thank you very much. We appreciate your waiting here all day and appreciate your fine testimony. Have a good one. And we go to